Hey, gang. We're exactly, at least at the time of this recording, 2 weeks away from the start of IA. And I have a vid coming hopefully pretty soon that'll spell out some of the strategies for approaching the biggest sale of the year. There's some very cool stuff in the monthly report this week. So let's cruise through a couple things that are just kind of housekeeping that aren't that. So, first up, subscriber flair. The subscriber flair for November is kind of fun. Cool leather jacket and a throne. No idea where we'll put that throne. Maybe one day, I was kind of thinking about this, we'll be able to build structures. They're either more, I don't know, organic or piecemeal, maybe one day, kind of like the derelict settlements. Anyways, eventually, probably. Pretty short roadmap roundup this time. There's only three things on it. They changed the picture for the Wicklow ship's card. They're updating the Max Ox cannons. Max Ox? I think it's Max On. And they're working on exterior freight elevators. And this is the big one. It's now going to include Stanton, so that's huge. It was originally just going to be Nyx and Pyro, which made almost no sense. Of course, including the mini stations in Stanton might mean that this gets delayed to probably a .x patch, but if they drop it with the live patch or the first patch out the door, yeah, that's pretty cool. Almost ready to go to a wider release. Actually, I think live is dropping as I'm recording this, so test this while you can. Engineering will have a massive impact on this game, and yeah, I have a vid coming out about that too, hopefully pretty soon. Also, some opinions on the whole PDC controversy and mostly why I think it'll probably be short-lived, so stay tuned for it. Levski, as someone who is Evocati, it looks very good and very familiar for those who were around when it was still in the game. The layout is more or less the same, and it's definitely been updated and brought to modern standards. And is it laggy? Yeah, but really, Evocati's always been laggy, if we're being honest. That's usually before they go through and optimize everything. Okay, enough honey dicking. Let's get into the good stuff. This is our first real post-SitCon monthly report. So it's the first one where we can actually talk about, or where CIG can actually talk about the things that they talked about at SitCon. And there's some cool stuff here, so let's get into it. Narrative and social AI teams are working on bulking up Levski, so working on voice packs and NPC behaviors at the new location. The rest of this is working on consolidating FPS and dogfighting combat behaviors and triggers. Basically just working on consistency, it sounds like, as well as more voice packs. This team's working on animations, particularly carrying animations, so that's interesting. I'll need to keep an eye out on the NPCs and the LZs and see if I can spot any of them that are carrying stuff around. So far, they mostly just sort of seem to meander around and occasionally say, "Hi there." Maybe next year, I don't know. We'll keep an eye out for it. They worked on how NPCs react to being scanned, and that one really seems to be ramping up for the FPS scanning and pinging being implemented, which they've been talking about for years. And finally, obviously, they did a lot of work on the Yormandi, which I still haven't tangled with, but hopefully I should be able to jump into that sandbox in the next week or two, provided I'm not too distracted by IAE or jumping into Nyx, which I've really been looking forward to. It looks like this team was focused on NPC navigation in flight and FPS. Lots of talk about voxel paths and flow graphs, but that's the gist of it. Improving navigation both now and moving forward. Operating manual doors, elevators, presumably transit, and hopefully one day walking on a ship as either a passenger or a crew. It looks like Mission System V2 is back on the radar after a bit of a hiatus. It sounds like the rest of the stuff they're working on is related to entity scripting and UI support for the new inventory system, or I think that's what it is. Let me know if you think the mannequin reference is something else, but that's sort of how it read to me. Maybe suiting up? I'm not sure. First time I've heard it referenced with that word, mannequin. So I could be way off. The animation team worked on the Yormandi, and this is kind of cool. Dog capture with animal trainers. So they're motion capturing dogs for Copion animations, apparently. So honestly, now I feel even worse when I have to shoot them. So thanks for that, CIG. Then they worked on facial animations for who we can assume is Evelyn Evlevsky. While I didn't see him when I dropped into Evocati, I did see Rekka while I was tooling around. So she's back. She wasn't handing out missions, but she would turn around and talk to you. But I don't think any of the in-person mission givers are actually working at the moment, like in the live build or Evocati. Finally, they worked on a new mission giver and voice packs for Nyx. They didn't mention Rekka here. They specifically said a new mission giver, and she wouldn't technically be new. So I'm not sure if this will be a truly new mission giver or not. So time will tell on that one. Sounds like the character art team is zeroed in on a new gang. At a guess, this will be the anti-Vandal gang, who's handing over Vandal bodies and tech to ASD, but also pissing off the Vandals so they push into the Nyx system. Like, they needed a reason, but still, I think these guys are like the, it begins with an S, I think. The Skeevers or something like that. I don't know, but the Strife, I don't know. I don't remember their name, but yeah, they're, you poke around, you'll find their name. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, and I don't remember who it is, so I can't. Expect to see a lot more of them as they roll out Nyx in the coming year. They're kind of the mystery group that they mentioned several times during SitCon. Yeah, so here's the part most of you are probably here for. Starting off, yeah, of course they worked on the Paladin, Stinger, and Shiv, so they could drop them for SitCon. Now on to the sexy stuff. Full steam ahead on the Hammerhead and Aurora updates. The Aurora is waiting for the downstream team, so audio and VFX. So it might be an end of the year thing. The Hammerhead sounds like they're still setting it up. So probably the equivalent of mid gray box, since the ship is already kind of built, but they're moving around components and stuff. I would peg that one for probably a release in a month or 3, somewhere in that window, probably on the far side of January, if I had to guess. The whole B, or Invictus. Invictus would make sense. Where was I? The whole B. The whole B, which I personally think will be a really dominant early game hauler and probably a mainstay for things like base construction for its ability to move huge amounts of external cargo and land on planets, is at its white box review. A little hard to say how fast it'll cruise through development, but assuming it passes this gate and enters gray box, it'll probably be June of next year, if not sooner. Misk has pretty well-established style guide by this point. Sexy ship number 1 is up, and there's a hint at one of the hidden ships of IE here too, I think. They're cruising along with both versions of the Ironclad, so the Ironclad and the upgunned Ironclad Assault. But again, they mentioned that they're working on the command module for those ships separately. This makes sense because I'm pretty sure it's the same module, the same command module that's on the Caterpillar. And it would make sense that a company like Drake would reuse an asset like that between different types of ships. Yeah, like to make the Drake Snail or Flappy Bird concept we're still waiting on. It looks like I was right when I said that it looks like the command module when they originally showed that side scroll. See? Stick with me, people. Spoilers here, but it sounds like it's going to be called the Drake Clipper. Sadly, not the Drake Snail, which sure sounds like a cargo vessel. But if it's based around the command module, there's not really a lot of room on that thing. So maybe external cargo? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with either way. For the Ironclads, the fact they say progressed well into gray box, it sounds like they're bouncing right along. I'm guessing they're still eyeing them for Invictus of next year, but they still might surprise us and drop them in the December patch. Super unlikely, but not impossible. Then they talk about 4 unannounced ships, but we do have a pretty good idea of what a couple of these are. The first of those is the Drake Clipper, which I just talked about. Another is almost certainly a variant of the Wolf that's probably going to be called the Alpha or the Alpha Wolf, which is a misconception, but I'm not going to go there right now. Likely a laser version, and I'm low-key hoping that it has a beam weapon, since Jared hinted this was going to be the year of beam weapons a couple months back. So that's ship 1 and 3. They mentioned an all-new ship that has its paints being settled, so it's real far along in development. Good chance that last one is the anti-air version of the MTC. Or the command version. Whatever. It sounds like it'll be the LTI token for IAE this year. Surprisingly, it sounds like they're going to work on the UTV, which I think I mentioned in my ship concepts a few months back. And I actually thought that they might have been ditching this concept since they rolled out the MTC. This is basically a Jeep crossed with a tiny flatbed version of the Steve. It looks cool, and I'll probably honestly flip my Steve for it when it eventually drops. It'll be interesting how they tweak the handling to make the STV and the UTV feel different. I'm guessing the UTV will have better traction, being more Jeep-like, and the STV will be faster, which I think it's already one of the fastest wheeled vehicles in the game. And yeah, here's the big ball kick of the month. Pre-production work has begun on the Liberator. Those who have followed this channel for a while know that I think the Liberator is probably going to be one of the more useful late game ships in the game when it drops. It's basically a force multiplier for whatever loop you're engaged in if you're running with any kind of a group. Just a fantastic ship. And it sounds like we'll probably be getting it in, at a guess, about 18 months. 2027 is going to be lit if they manage to get both this and the BMM spun up. Finally, they mentioned that the US team was working on 2 unannounced vehicles, and both sound like they're pretty close, with one already on the downstream teams and the other hitting its gray box review. So possible December releases. They usually drop something smaller on us with that patch, so that would actually kind of make sense. Day of the Vara, SitCon, and Bar Seasons. I guess my question is, at this point, with yet another week with no video updates, where's all the video content subscriber bucks are supposed to be paying for? Not that I thought SitCon was bad, just that we're used to be getting a lot more information, a lot more development information during the year. And so far this year, if you take out the ship commercials and patch ads, we've only really had about 10 to maybe 12 vids in development. And that's around 1 a month or less than 1 a month. I'm really hoping we get more vids in the new year, or at least an explanation of why they're dropping off so hard this year. Core Gameplay is working on the new inventory, which is looking pretty good, but also looking like we probably aren't going to see it this year. Really, that might not be a bad thing, given how much inventory touches everything in this game. It would suck to get it in a December patch, have it be broken, and then not have a fix for another month, month and a half. So yeah, CIG, please roll that bad boy out next year unless it's really good and stable. Speaking of something that could be an episode or 3 of an ISC or ISL, the economy team is working on building out the economy of Nyx and trying to make it unique. To this point, this is something that's kind of been lagging, as it still feels like the economy as a whole is the same placeholder we've more or less had since 2016. They worked on freelance cargo trading, tweaking trade routes, upped info in journals to give players hints on what and where to sell, that sort of thing. They also did some work on missions for the salvage loop. I would say one of the things I really want to see here that I think would be really cool is if player abandoned ships started generating salvage missions after a while. I imagine having all those derelicts piled up around landing zones and points of interest probably doesn't help performance either, so this would be a win-win. Apparently, CIG took a page from my book and just merged a bunch of these teams together. Wait, no, that I merged R&D and VFX because VFX usually has like 1 or 2 lines, but this one also has VFX, and R&D and VFX are still included in the monthly report, so no idea. Let's see what this new Frankenstein's monster of a team has been up to. Mostly, it sounds like they're working on integrating Vulcan and Genesis. And given how impressive Genesis is looking, well, nice. Keep doing what you're doing. This team's just trucking right along on the Frontier Fighters storyline, also building up the stories and missions and events that'll come with the Nyx drop and the future Nyx drops. It sounds like they're also working on local missions. So this is a bit of a misunderstanding people had, and I certainly had. Apparently, these aren't necessarily missions that'll pop up on your Mobi-Glass when you arrive at a location, but missions that are available on an actual physical job board at the location. So you land a settlement, there'll be a section of town where there'll be a billboard where you can actually walk up to it, see missions posted up on the board, and just click on it and take it. Kind of like, actually exactly like the billboards in Wicklow's Emporia. Kind of cool, but definitely not what I thought it was from the original descriptions they were giving it. Also sounds like they're going to reboot Siege of Orison, but according to Sitcon, at least I think it was Sitcon, this will be in the form of an instance mission, which is a good idea. Siege was a lot of fun, but I always felt like I was joining just as someone was ending the whole thing, like snagging the helmet off the end boss. And having it instance means that groups or really spicy solos will be able to enjoy the full experience and not just join when other people are halfway through with it or already winning it. The narrative team has been going ballistic this year with all the patches and storylines that have dropped. Now they're putting the finishing touches on this initial launch of Nyx. Lots of branding and informing environmental art, like I would assume graffiti. And I imagine a fair amount of retconning, since Nyx was supposed to be uninhabitable, or Nyx 1 was. According to the splash page for the patch, it looks like they're going to explain away with an advancement in terraforming. Here's hoping that storyline is more than just a single paragraph on the splash page, though, because that should be a huge deal in the verse. They actually built an entire artificial planet because they couldn't nail down terraforming. The big thing that most of you will care about with this team is that they're now moving on to tier 1 of item recovery. If you're not aware, that will also come with being able to loot bodies and gear again. So quick aside, because it's been a while since CIG's talked about this, and boy, it would be nice if we got an ISC on it to clarify the next step, but here we are. Tier 1 will come with item and ship registration. Basically, you more or less ensure what you're wearing or what you've equipped on your ship by registering it at a kiosk. And then if it's destroyed, lost, or stolen, you can pay a fee and get it back. If someone steals your stuff or loots it off your body, they can use it until you go through that reclaim process. Once you do that, that stuff will be bricked and unusable after a certain amount of time. They haven't really specified how long that'll be, and I'm sure they don't know yet, but I'm sure they'll be balancing it and dialing it in as they roll out the feature. If you don't register it, yeah, it's gone. Note that pledge items, things that you paid real money for, are kind of auto-registered. You can always pay the fee and get them back, whether you actually register them at the kiosk or not. Tier 2, which is a ways down the road, don't get me wrong, will be implemented after crafting is in the game. In that version, people will be able to prevent an item from bricking that they've looted, or even unbrick it, as well as effectively wipe the serial number for it and be able to sell it legally. So yeah, a pretty big deal and a pretty big change to the way things are working right now. So yeah, you can be ganked for what you're wearing or carrying, but as long as you have it registered, you can get it back by paying a fee. R&D had a ton of things they were working on in October, while VFX worked on the Yormandi and all the ships for Sitcon and IE, which is basically all they said, which is a huge amount of work for 2 sentences. R&D, for their part, is working on making things run faster and more efficiently, requiring less memory, basically the kind of stuff you'd expect a team to do for a project that is moving into beta. In addition to that, they're working on light and shadows and trying not to blow their poly budgets while they do so. Cool stuff, and it'll make the stuff rolling out of Genesis that much more impressive when it's done. And gang, that's it for this monthly report. Are you looking forward to any of the ships dropping in IA, or if you have big plans for CCU chains or want to snap up something rare that you've had your eye on, or if you have any questions on CCU chains for IAE, shout it out in the comments below, and keep an eye out for the vids on how to plan for that big sale that's coming up in 2 weeks. I'm hoping to have that out by this weekend, but until then, catch me next time.